Hello, friends. You're watching Arc Habitu, especially for young, innovative minds. So, this is lesson 1 of History series for B Arc entrances like AAT, Nata, and JEE Mains B Arc. So, there will be a series of videos in this history series which will detail each and every part of architecture history that should be known before writing B Arc entrance exam. Use your headphones for a calm study because history is not going to be much interesting, but you should focus on your study by using the headphones, or be ready with a pen and paper to jot down your favorite storylines. So, make this history as a story for your smooth study. Okay? Now, moving on to the topic. First of all, we should brief the history of architecture, and that is the ancient world. The history of architecture is intrinsically aligned with the history of civilization. While our nomadic ancestors had developed sophisticated forms of temporary shelter, some of which are still used today, such as yurt tents of people of Mongolian plain, the change to a more sedentary form of existence fueled the need of permanent shelter. The first such built forms fulfilled the function of providing shelter from elements. They also served to protect property and people through fortification and to establish cultural identity. The beginning in fertile alluvial valleys along the rivers Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, which occupies much of modern day Iraq. The early Sumerian civilization produced the origin of much of the architecture that was to follow. So, architecture begins when engineering ends. That is a proverb. But I was about to say that early early people, they were nomads. That means they had no permanent settlements. They traveled from place to place, time to time, with their huge carry bags, with their bullocks, sheep, every animals they had, with their whole family and whole group. They traveled from place to place, and that's why they don't need any shelter, any permanent shelter. They occupied empty caves, tree shades, everything else that could be uh, used as a shade giving thing. Okay, so they had no use of a permanent settlement, but later on they discovered plains which were fertile and they settled on the plains, and that's where architecture begins. Okay, and then moving on with ancient world, the first thing to discuss with is Egypt. Why Egypt? Because most of the architecture history aligns in Greek architecture, Roman architecture. And in Greek architecture itself, most of the contributors of Greek architecture is Egyptians. So we should discuss upon Egyptian architecture. In contrast to the city states of Mesopotamia, which were often warring with each other, the Nile was surrounded on either side by desert, and this made assault from the outside more difficult and resulted in a society that remained untainted by external influences for more than 3000 years. During this period, the Egyptians developed architecture that was characterized in the early dynastic periods by pyramidal burial tombs formed above ground and later by richly decorated tombs in Valley of Kings. They had a weird belief of life after death, and this belief was mirrored in everyday life too, and experienced as a series of dualities like night and day, flood and drought, water and desert. This belief and such dualities explain why the Valley of Kings is located on the western side of Nile, the horizon on which the sun sets, because they had a belief in life after death. And while the temples and settlements of Luxor are on eastern side of where the horizon of rising sun occupies. So that's the duality in Egyptian culture, and that's why the Valley of Kings and the settlements of Luxor are on either side of Egypt, where one side is the site of setting sun and the other side is rising sun. So, uh, this is the fundamental thing of architecture in Egypt, because every architecture includes a belief of life after death. Now, this symbolic positioning of ancient Egyptian buildings was further enhanced by the precision with which they were constructed. The pyramids of Giza were built around 2600 BC, accurate to 100 millimeter over the 150 meter perfectly square base, and apex of the pyramid creates a precise geometric form derived from golden section. So, golden section, golden ratios, Fibonacci sequence, etc., are some techniques which allowed beautification of buildings. Okay. Within each pyramid, small passages running from burial chambers are precisely aligned with celestial constellations, as they were seen as resting place to which the soul of pharaohs would travel in afterlife. So they were mere beliefs. The scale and exactness of execution of these structures is breathtaking and required even by today's standards, an enormous feat of engineering, not least in sourcing the several million stone blocks used in the construction. These stones were quarried in Upper Egypt, some 640 kilometers from the site, and were transported by water before being raised into the position. So, it's still a mystery how these tons of stones are lifted to such heights to build such enormous buildings, enormous structures like pyramids. So they are still a mystery. Some say that they are built by made use of elephants to carry upon the stones, and some say that they are lifted by water from the upper Egypt to lower Egypt, and there are many stories behind it, but it still remains as a mystery how without big machineries they managed to build these enormous sites. So that's the brief of Egyptian history, but we are going to detail Egyptian history, then Greek architecture, then Roman architecture, and it goes on like that. It's basically for a person who is enthusiastic. History of architecture is very very interesting, because our new buildings are built by using this history as the base. So thank you for watching the video. If you are benefiting from this video, do subscribe to our channel and also share with your friends who are in need of this video, and also like if you are liking the video, and do comment if you have any further doubts or any suggestions, and if you need some specific topics to be detailed upon. And also press the bell icon so that you'll never miss any of our videos. Thank you.